Gang, tonight is another special one of those nights because we are going to be joined by Stan Gray from TRQ right here on Black Freethinkers, and it's coming up right now. Welcome back to Black Freethinkers, everybody. It's your boy Jay Bundy, Pocket Locker. I'm really excited to be here. And of course, I am joined by my lovely, lovely co-host, Maya Adkisson and Cynthia McDonald. So we are so excited to have the three of us here. And the man of the hour is Stan Gray. How are you doing, sir?
I am good. I'm good. Nice to be here. I didn't know I was the man of the hour. I thought I was just coming here to hang out and stuff.
No, you're the special guest, man.
Okay.
And I know the people is excited.
If I'd known all that.
I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be all up in your business. I know the ladies is excited. I know they love to hear that voice of yours, brother. That voice is something else. But tell the people what you do with that voice and where they can find you.
Right now, the thing I'm working on is my YouTube channel. I've been working on that for about the past year, but right now I'm really starting to put work into it. It's called Stan Gray TRQ. The TRQ stands for the right questions, because that's basically what I'm all about. I teach my kids this from day one. You got to ask the right question. If you want to know the truth, you got to ask the right questions. So particularly the focus is religious. I might dabble in politics at some point in the near future, depending on how things go, especially given recent events. I'm starting to feel kind of a pull towards that. But it's really mainly about deconstructing the Christian faith. That's something that I did about 10, 12 years ago now. Wow. And I haven't stopped since.
So can you tell us a little bit maybe just about what your background in the faith was like? And you know, just sort of what things were like before you deconstructed, and if you remember that process, what was that like?
You know, I remember it pretty well now because I've been on a couple of shows and stuff like this, and people have been asking me about it, so I kind of have it in my head. It's dragged everything up from the depths of my memories, you know. So about 12 years ago, just about the time where my daughter was born, is when I really started the deconstruction process. But let's go back a little bit further in time. Little Stan Gray was running around, being dragged from church to church, some medium-sized churches, mostly churches that were too small to have their own building, you know, so we would be in hotel conference rooms and, you know, those types of small little, mostly black churches, you know, in the different little
churches where the people are, not where the building is.
We believed that type of thing out of necessity because they didn't have no money, apparently. You know, so that's what people do when you're struggling. You kind of make sense of things. You make the world make sense to you.
I gotta say real quick, man, I was actually playing drums at a church as an atheist in an evangelical church. And they were a load-in, load-out church because they didn't have a building yet. And we used to have to get there at I think 6:45 in the morning or something like that to pray. And then we had to load everything in. So I had to build the drum set every week and the sound cage and put in the system and the screens and the curtains and all of this stuff. And it was torture, right? Literally, I'd be the person at 9 o'clock on Saturday night, y'all, I gotta go because I have to go to bed because I have to get up this early. And I'm gonna tell you the craziest thing, man. When they stopped doing that and they got a permanent situation, I was disappointed. Because that had just become part of it. And there was something to the team of us, yes, on the worship team and on the tech team that had to like show up that early. That was kind of like our time to just hang and have fun and like do our own thing. And then when it came, I could just, the drums are already here. I could just sit down and start playing. Like this don't feel right now.
Yeah, no, I
so
dig
weird.
It. You were there
so
for the
weird.
experience.
But yeah, yeah. All right, go ahead. Please continue.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was kind of the situation that I saw a lot, except for the fact that most of the ones that we went to didn't even have music because they didn't either have instruments or they didn't have people who knew how to play them.
Sure.
Sometimes there was a couple of people that would bring in a keyboard and stuff like that in certain scenarios. But inevitably, every one of those churches, they would eventually start teaching something that my parents would kind of disagree with. And, whether it be some differences with tithing or some controversy that the pastor will start talking about. And then, he's planting seeds because he knows that eventually some people are going to find out what he did. You know how they do that little thing.
Yeah.
You go in there and like just as an example, like where they're like, hey, who among you have, ever considered cheating on your wife or something like that? Look at your neighbor and say this, and you're like, whoa, hey, who said something about cheating? It's like, not that happened, but like, that type of thing.
Yeah, why is this on your heart this morning, Pastor?
Yeah, exactly. What's going on? So, like there was always something or another. And I was a kid, so I wasn't totally dialed into all the controversies and stuff, but I'd hear my mom say, hey, well, they talking about all this, we need to give 20% and this and that. And we're like, all right, time to move on. So eventually what we started doing was...
hold on. I'm so sorry. I have to stop you for a moment. So the church that you were previously part of with your family advocated for you to give above the tithe to 20%. Did I hear you correctly?
That's what I said, but I was just throwing out an example there. I'm not saying that that's what happened because I honestly was very minimally aware of that dynamic. All I knew as a kid growing up was that every so often, hey, this church, they're talking about this and that's not what the Bible says. So we go somewhere else. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
That's why I'm not going to name names or anything because first of all, nobody cares or knows who those people are anyway. Second of all, somebody sees my face talking about here and, I don't want to cause no drama.
Yeah, no worries. No need. We got you.
Yeah. Not that that's what y'all are asking for. But, it was basic, long story short, there would be issues and disagreements. And then at the end of the day, we ended up just kind of my parents saying, you know what, let's look at the Bible for ourselves. Let's study for ourselves and learn unedited, unfiltered, what the Bible is all about. And my mom was like an amateur Bible scholar. She was really good and very, very good at apologetics. And that is how for so many years, we did these Bible studies and pretty diligent, like thorough Bible studies, went from A to Z in the Bible. And anytime there was a question, there was questions where I was kind of afraid to ask. But my mom would say, hey, you know what? Ask. Like this, you shouldn't be afraid to ask anything. And that's where I got my kind of my inquisitive nature from, I think, that process.
Wow. Did you feel like that was sincerely there at the time? Because I felt that way kind of too. Like growing up, everything was stay in school, ask questions, and it felt like when I look back on it now, it almost feels like I asked too many questions, or they didn't want me asking all of those questions. Yeah. But it felt like they didn't know better than to encourage me to be inquisitive. And I think that was largely just a holdover for how you encourage young people in school and things like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I believe it was genuine. I mean, I never had any reason to believe otherwise. And my parents to this day have never discouraged me from asking tough questions, and my mom sadly passed away 5 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, my condolences.
Thank you. But, to this day, and I have no gripes or grudges or grievances about my upbringing, the way my parents raised me, even with the Christianity and with the Christian indoctrination that I later had to battle against and defeat within myself, which I'll touch on later. I acknowledge and accept that they were doing their due diligence. They were doing the best that they could and what they believed was the right thing to do to save me from eternal punishment. So I can't fault them for doing what they believed was the right thing, you know, and I don't fault them for that. So, you know, people have accused me before of being like, oh, yeah, you're mad, angry at your parents, and they did this and they did that. I'm like, no, I'm not angry at my parents. My parents did everything for me, and they were wonderful people. My dad still is a wonderful man. He's still a Christian. My mom went to her last breath believing that I was one day going to find the truth and everything would be fine, because she knows that if I ask enough questions, eventually I'll end up right back where I started, pretty much. But you know, we still disagree to that on that.
But there was never any like resentment or anything.
No.
Was it something you talked about?
My mom was my favorite debate partner. I used to say all the time, because we would talk for hours and go back and forth about stuff. And, you know, her apologetics leveled up over the years, and my ability to counteract those apologetics also leveled up. So we were sparring partners, you know. But, you know, the last year or so, because she was getting sick and everything, I just left that alone and just focused on, you know, being with her and having the kids be able to spend time with her and stuff like that, because it was kind of a not super sudden, but I mean, the thing went from 0 to 100 in about 6 months. You know, it was kind of crazy, you know.
So I really envy that, because that is the one thing that I do have a certain amount of resentment towards my family for. It's not the belief. I get the belief. It's not the way they raised me, because I agree with you. Like, they did everything they could. And I'm not even mad at them about it, but it does hurt me that they won't talk about it. It hurts me that I was raised this way. My family will show you a family album and show you we have ministers going all the way back to the plantation. We're Black folks. Most of us can't even trace our history back to the plantation, but my family can trace it back to the plantation and know they're all ministers. And then you're just raised in the church. I'm talking about 3-4 times a week. You know, my grandparents are the type of people who pray for traveling mercies before they pull out the driveway and don't say hello when they answer the phone. They answer the phone, praise the Lord. So for it to be that intense, and then now we can't even talk about it like that. That kills me. Because I just want to have the conversations, even if it's not about trying to change each other or convert each other, just to understand. It's just certain questions I wanted to know. Do you believe this or do you believe that? You know, I've been exposed to a lot of different Christian theologies, and I sometimes wonder how the people in my family themselves interpret the particulars, right? But now that I'm known as the non-believer, it's like it's like rude of me to even bring up anything. So I was like, damn, I wish I had that with my family. Cynthia, Maya, I don't know, what are y'all thoughts on this type of thing, and what is your situation like?
Oh, go ahead, Cynthia.
I mean, well, I guess like I have a different background, only because, like, you know, with me, I was raised Episcopal, and my family wasn't like super hella religious per se. Like, I mean, like they went to church, they believed in God, they gave an offering to the church itself, but you know, I guess like my background is a little bit different from some other Black people who actually, especially in America, that grew up in a more like Pentecostal, holiness, evangelical type of situation, right? I think that like I was exposed mostly to that world when I went to college and I got saved at 18. And then like, you know, I was like like super exposed to what that was like, right? And including, you know, when I was growing up, there was no, you didn't bring a Bible to church because there was a book of common prayer there that you used to follow the service. And by the time I was 9, I like memorized like the service like by heart. But when I was like in like a more holiness, like non-denominational Church of God in Christ light, I just say that because they didn't actually like save the denomination per se, but their services and belief systems definitely followed that particular edict. It wasn't really about, you know, making sure you had your Bible with you, making sure that, you know, if you wore a dress and it was above your knee, you had to make sure you had a lap scarf on you so you would not tempt somebody who happens to actually look at you, like, you know, things of that nature. And you know, for a while there, I know for me specifically, I thought that that was the right route. I thought that, you know, perhaps when I was growing up and I didn't really have like that really staunch, strict holiness background, that maybe, you know, that my family was wrong. Maybe my mom was wrong. Maybe my dad, who was Roman Catholic, was wrong. So, but I think that like after a while, because I was older and I started to see how the hierarchy of the church seemed to be pretty, you know, hypocritical. And also, and I didn't particularly care for the misogyny. And also it seemed like the pastor, apostle, prophet of the home, the angel of the house, as they would say, had different rules than the people who happened to be in the pews. That didn't sit well with me, and eventually I kind of like worked my way out of it, but it took some time. But you know, Stan, I'm curious to hear about, because like one of the things that you said that you was going to bring up later on is that you were going to kind of just talk about a bit how the indoctrination of your upbringing affected you. I'm really curious to hear about that.
So regarding that, if we fast forward, you know, imagine I had this upbringing of questioning and researching and looking through and using apologetics to basically quell any misgivings I may have had, you know, when I saw, you know, David cut Goliath's head off with his own sword after he defeated him. It wasn't just the cute, oh, look, God helped him kill the dude with a rock to his head, which is already kind of crazy to say to kids. But then you leave out the fact that, you know, he cut his head off and walked around town with it afterwards. When we read the whole story, I'm like, man, isn't that kind of brutal? Like, how is that? Why don't we, you know, we don't give credit to God for allowing him to do that or helping him to do that. It's kind of like a really graphic, needlessly violent thing. But it's like, hey, well, that's what people understood back then. That's the way you had to communicate that you had dominated your fallen enemy or whatever. So, you know, after growing up like that and hearing these types of excuses and apologetics for things, it came time for me to have my own children one day, right?
Sure.
And I was thinking, all right, I'm not comfortable. I don't like the idea of taking my kids to church to have them taught everything that they need to know about this God that I believe in. I need to be able to do that myself. So I also am I try to be a very rational and reasonable person. So I think in my head, okay, well, I should be positive that this is the right thing that I'm about to teach my kids, because it's very important to me and I want it to be important to them. But in order for me to teach it, I need to make sure I know inside and out exactly what I'm getting into and what I'm getting them into, because I might have some blind spots or whatever the case may be. So I said, what I'm going to do is look at the Bible all over again as though I'm looking at the holy book, the holy text of a different religion. One that I don't already give the benefit of the doubt to, one that I don't already, you know, I'm not already in the mindset that, hey, this must be right. And if it seems wrong, it's not wrong. I'm wrong. No Christian would give that benefit of the doubt to any other religious text other than their own. So I said, if mine is the real truth, I should be able to do that, and it should still come out just as radiant and flawless as I see it now. And I started to do that, and I started to look at things from the very beginning, asking all the same questions that I always did, but not taking for granted that, okay, there's got to be a great explanation to make this good. You know what I'm saying? Sodom and Gomorrah, the Amalekites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Canaanites, all the genocides, all the insane rules in Leviticus and Numbers, the guidelines on slavery, like all that. Instead of saying, oh, well, the economy, God knew he had to slowly walk them away from slavery and into a different economic system because it would have been too much for them. Oh, but they could just eliminate shellfish and they could stone their children for being disrespectful. And, like I had to look at it as though I was looking at Hinduism or Taoism or any other religious text. And when I started doing that, I was like, man, what if this stuff is like this because it's just not right? It's wrong. What if that's the case? And one day I remember it was after I got out of the military. I had a baby with my wife, my first daughter, and I was in a police academy because I wanted to be home more because I was going to overseas and stuff like that with the military. Wanted a job where I could be home, so I joined the police, went to a police academy. And I was in my dorm one night by myself, and I said, what if Jesus is not God? I said it out loud. And when I said that, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I literally had like a physical sensation that was similar to someone grabbing my heart and squeezing it.
Ooh.
That was the first time. That was like the one question that for whatever reason seemed too far for me to ask up until that point. But for some reason, that was the first day I decided to just ask it consciously and intentionally and out loud to myself. No one heard this but me, but it still it almost felt like a pre-programmed like fail-safe type of thing, like a defense mechanism. And I was like, whoa, like this doesn't seem right. There's something wrong. There's something wrong here. And I don't want my daughter to have to go through this. That was the first kind of thought process that I had. And from that point on, I was like, all right, I need to buckle down for real and go through this step by step. And it started to make me, when I looked at it from a kind of outsider perspective, it became so obvious and clear to me that the stories were completely man-made. I think we lost her. Okay. Oh, there she is. It became so obvious to me that everything was man-made. Like, for example, if you were to ask a Christian, okay, what's the reason why this non-Christian, non-Israelite or non-Christian person gave this command, to rape and pillage a town, take all of their land, take the young women who've not slept with men, kill everyone else, take the animals, take the goods. What's the reason why they would do that? It's because those are men we're talking about. These are human beings. That's what human beings like to do. They like taking other people's things and keeping it for themselves. And one very effective tool for getting people to do that is telling them that a deity said it's okay. And you put that story in any other holy book, and it's it would be just as clear to a Christian as it is to me. Like, no, there was no God telling them that they can pillage this town and literally use the women and children and livestock as plunder for themselves, including moving into the land and killing everyone else that's there, all the fighting men and the boys. No other religion would get that excuse that, oh, well, God, who's all good, he wanted that land for his people. So therefore he had to murder everybody who was there. Or, oh, you know what? Those people were sacrificing their children to another god, burning them in the fire. So we had to kill them and the kids that we're supposedly trying to save from being sacrificed, if they're boys. It's so obvious and so plain to me, looking back at it now, that that's just a bunch of dudes who wanted that stuff. So they told each other and agreed with each other that a god said, that's our stuff. We can go there and do whatever we want, and it'll be all good. And history is written by the victors. We can paint these people and say, oh, well, just say that they were sacrificing their babies. Well, we killed the babies too. Now don't worry about that. Like this, it's absurd to me. And like you said, Jay, I wish that I could speak about this, like take a whole weekend and go to my grandma's house and have everybody there and speak to everybody about this and let it all out. But I can't do that either. So like my family hasn't disowned me, and they don't treat me any kind of way. A couple of them, my aunties and a couple of people, have said some kind of wild stuff to me in response to my officially, coming out as not being Christian anymore, which is many years ago. Right now, if I was to go there, you wouldn't even know. You would never know that I'm like the one non-believer there. But because we're my family. I'm very fortunate. I don't have anybody trying to shun me or anything like that.
You know what? Yeah. In some sense, I want to almost like commend that and celebrate that with people. Like, as much as I hate not having those conversations, I do think it's important, especially people out there that are hesitant to come out or hesitant to let the people in your life know that, to know that honestly, for the most part, it's like nothing. It's like, it's if anything, I'm irritated at how much it like doesn't change things. Like I wish it was like this big change, but at the end of the day, like my mother still treats me like my mother, my grandparents still treat me like their oldest grandson. My cousins still treat me like the oldest male cousin in the family. Like, really not much. But
at the same time, it's like, isn't it kind of crazy though? Like you think I'm going to be in hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just you're feeding me, sweet potatoes with pineapples on Thanksgiving,
Yeah. Oh, baby, like, we still love you, but you're going to burn in the eternal fire. You know that, right?
Exactly. I'm like, Grandma, you're not going to try to save me or nothing?
Well, no, baby, the Lord has turned you over to a reprobate mind. So, who am I?
Yeah. Hey, Romans 9:22. Some people are just made as vessels of destruction, vessels of wrath. Why not?
There's always going to be like that select few. Only God is going to save a remnant.
Oh, I'm so thankful that we never got into the whole tongues thing. People be making themselves look silly as hell.
Yes, I know. I will say that like one day I'm going to write my whole book in glossalia and see what happens.
That was good. You freestyled that too.
Yeah, I sure did. Bars, son.
Bars.
I'm curious to know, Stan. I know that I think that Maya, Jay, and I can come up with a day. I don't know. Okay, I'm not going to assume for everybody, but I know for myself, I can come up with the day that God died. That God, was no longer consequential. That, you came up with the realization that, this is not, this particular character that you have been taught is not real. It's a myth. Can you talk about, do you have that type of day? And if you do, can you talk about it?
Man, That's a really interesting question, because as far as I can think back, it was more of a slow process. You know, it was more like he bled out, you know, over time. You know, it's just every time I read a story that I had revered and really, you know, appreciated, you know, the story of Job, for example, I used to love that story. I used to see it as something that, you know, God placed there as this shining example for a man that was living a life and went through the worst possible series of events and still remained faithful and still remained loyal to God. But later, I read that and realized that he was a good man and God just threw him under the bus for fun, to find out something that God already knew. And, you know, when I used to read that story back in the day, it's like, oh man, yeah. Oh yeah, his children, you know, that they fell, his 10 children died, all of his servants died, his livestock died and everything. But hey, at the end, he got 10 new children, and he got 10, you know, he got all his servants back, and he's got all his animals back. But now I look at him like, wait a minute, 10 new children, how does that make things better? I have 2 children. If God, for no reason, to test me on something that he already knew what I was going to do, killed my 2 children and then later gave me 2 new children, that's not a fair trade, especially not for something that he already knew exactly what I would or wouldn't do. You know, so that's like, not that, you know, okay, now because of this reason, that's when I really realized that the character is not real. It's more that I realized that the things that I've been taking for granted and the things that I've been living my life on are just completely nonsensical. It's illogical and irrational to, even if you believe that really happened, to see it as a coherent and morally consistent narrative. You know, so I almost look at it from like an academic standpoint. I'm like, man, and that's part of the reason why it's so devastating that you can't really talk about this with people sometimes, because it's like, do they not know at all what I know? I mean, I can't comprehend looking at that story and seeing a beautiful plot and narrative anymore. And it doesn't even make sense. You know, it was just like little chips. It just chipped away over time. Every time I read a story with an untinted view, you know, without my rose-colored Christian glasses on, that my parents had all polished up for me over the years, and, you know, meticulously crafted and freaking deadbolted onto my face. You know, like it's riveted onto my face. I had to pry those things off through years of indoctrination, 20, 27, 28 years of indoctrination. And now I see it totally differently, and it's hard not to be able to just freely bring it up like, hey, wait a minute, what do you guys think about Abraham, the story of Abraham and Isaac, him having to take his son up to the mountain and fully believing that he was going to sacrifice his son.
And then God said, psych!
Yeah, exactly. Even though, I mean, but God knows everything. So didn't he know that Abraham would have been more than willing to kill his son if God tells him? And then it's another thing that's been bothering me lately. I'll just say it to y'all because y'all are kind enough to listen to me for a minute here. That whole thing with the child sacrifice. God supposedly has people wiped out, nations wiped out for a child sacrifice.
Mhm.
But it's not the child sacrifice that God has a problem with. It's the God that they're sacrificing to.
Mhm.
Because God said, if I tell
Mhm.
you to sacrifice your child, you better be ready and willing to do it.
Right.
It's
Mhm.
not, he doesn't have any moral opposition to the idea of child sacrifice, if you
No.
think about it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You know,
No, he
that
doesn't.
character, according to that story. Plus, not even talk about
No, I think
Jephthah,
according, I don't know that. I
where
mean,
he actually does accept a child
Christians
sacrifice.
use that as a like a scapegoat, I guess. Like, well, they were doing child sacrifice, but like if you read the story, it was almost always because they were sacrificing to other
Molech.
gods.
Yeah.
They were breaking the first commandment. So
Mhm.
that's almost always why. Well, that and God couldn't just have a famine that wiped everybody out of the promised land. Like they had to go in and show who had the bigger D. So
Yeah.
that,
And that's literally what it was all about at the time.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah. Can we just take a pause for the cause? And thank you, Maya, for chiming in because I missed your voice. Can we all really talk about how fucked up that Job story was? Like, Stan, I guess I can relate because I remember going to my holiness church back in the day and how Job was an example that was brought up a lot about a person that lost everything but still was faithful to God, and then God like rewarded him, double, twofold, fourfold, because he stayed loyal, and he would never curse God, right? Even though like the whole thing about Job was it was based on a bet that God made with Satan, which in of itself is completely problematic. But you know, but it's kind of interesting and like really messed up on how that story, especially like in like the evangelical space, is touted that this is how you're supposed to behave in order for you to get favor from God. So like when all the bad stuff happens to you, you lose your children, you lose your home, you lose your well-being in order for you to be able to make a living. Your health is threatened to the point where you're almost on death's door. um, and all the hedge of protection that I put there, because thus saith the Lord, blah blah blah, has been removed, so Satan can do whatever he does willy nilly. However, God says, okay, you can do all this stuff, but you can't kill him. You know, just to make some type of point, to God, like it. I guess for me, if I had that type of thing happen to me from a person that I was very close to, and all of a sudden they turned on me and they did all manners against me, like there was no way I would stay faithful to this person. Like there's absolutely no way. Why is it that this particular entity would be able to get a pass for doing something quite horrendous to a person that was loyal, who was, praying,
Blameless.
Right, completely right.
That's the
And
word
that's
that
what the
they
Bible.
use.
Yes, the Bible says when they talked about Job, that Job was blameless in the eyes of God. Okay, and and he was very diligent when it came to giving his offering, his doing his sacrifice. Like those oxens and those goats was getting the axe daily, people. Okay, with their burnt offerings and the whole you dig. So it's so interesting, like that this is the particular story, especially that you would hear in church so often, about how we as human beings are supposed to behave in order for us to stay, I guess, favorable in the eyes of God. But like, I don't. But like, any person who's, I don't know, sane would not actually accept that from another human being. Why would we accept that from God? I don't know.
Only because we've been convinced that every exception should be made for this God, for this entity. That's the reason. Just like God can unalive infants whenever he wants. God could destroy the entire world. God could send people to wipe out a city and it's fine. There's no moral implications there because he's God and therefore above the law. You know, but you could say that about any god, and then you no longer have a moral argument against that god. You could say that about Allah or Vishnu or Dionysus or Thor, and it's like, well, I mean, Thor, he's beyond your comprehension. He could do whatever he wants, and if he smashes a pregnant woman with his hammer, that's totally fine. That's not wrong. Actually, it's good because of who did it. But then they want to say, oh, we have the source of objective morality. You know.
Yeah, I think that
doesn't make no sense.
I think it's a huge problem. So one of the things it reminds me of is, you know, speaking about the times that we're living in. So there are certain people who voted for a certain candidate, we'll say, unfortunately with the winning candidate, but certain people in their family are now like not speaking to these people. So I've seen, you know, little young ladies on TikTok and they're crying because literally their grandmothers won't speak to them, or, you know, they're not invited to Thanksgiving, and stuff like this. And I have to be honest, there was a lot of pride in me. I was like really proud of these people. I was like, I'm glad these people took a stand and let it be known that like you're not welcome in my life because you've supported a person who's a felon, you supported a person who's a predator, you know, and all of these other things. And I looked at that and I said, wow, like they're really like seriously drawing a line in the sand. And I think that not enough of us do that because, you know, there's no consequences to the people for the craziness they support. But what I really thought about was like that same thing happens with the Bible, is that the genocide and the predatory behavior and the child sacrifice and slavery, like all of that's in there. And we let people really positively emote about all of these things, celebrate it in our faces, and we can't bring anything back to that. Like we're rude if we say like, could you please not worship your genocidal monster in front of the children? You know, like
yeah, that's a good point.
Scaring the kids. Stop it.
Yeah. Man. And you know, interestingly enough, I'm working on it's on the back burner, but I've been working on a video about this. To me, there's a reason why Christians often fall victim to the tactics employed by this individual who's going to be our next commander in chief again. And it's, you know, they're basically trained and conditioned. And I think in some level, even how, despite how much of an idiot I believe he is, he understands, or someone around him understands, that there's a huge group of people who are primed and trained to fixate on what they believe are positive qualities and ignore blatant, factual, provable, horrific aspects of that person or being. You know, they're trained to put filters over their eyes where anything negative that comes about that person will be basically disregarded. And they're trained to be in deference to authority and authoritarian figures. They're trained to, you know, it's like the perfect candidate for someone that boisterous and someone that crazy. Arrogance, you know, trained to confuse arrogance for power, and, you know, braggadociousness and what's the word? Narcissism for capability, and you know, that's what they're trained to do. And that's why there's some people who literally think that he's like a second coming of Jesus. Literally, some mega pastors that say this all the time. Yeah. He's modeling himself in exactly the way that
the Antichrist did.
what, you know what? And somehow they don't make that connection. You know, when their own book says, hey, there is going to be a dude that comes up and he's going to have this, this, and this, and his name is going to have the initials DJT, and you know, he's going to be orange. But that could literally be in there, and these people would not not listen.
Yeah, they wouldn't.
You know,
they wouldn't.
It's
Obama's orange.
But I think
they'd be zooming into Obama's skin pores and stuff, talking about, oh, look at this traces of orange when he's, you know, long out of politics right now.
Right.
I just want to say that you're hitting on something that I've been trying to articulate for a really long time, and I get frustrated feeling alone in that articulation and feeling like what we're seeing in the political landscape is I think a direct result and consequence of the religiosity and the particular way it's practiced in this country. And I literally don't think this country can defend itself from Christian nationalism without fighting Christianity. And it feels like people are not serious enough about the threat of Christian nationalism to realize that we have to deal with Christianity. And part of that is, and it's another thing that we keep hearing in this current situation, is we keep hearing how much this is not like Christianity. It's so different. You know, it doesn't make any sense because, you know, Donald Trump is not like Christianity. He's not like the Christian virtues and all that. And I'm always like, no, that's the lie. That's the PR. That's the marketing that it's all about love. When we look at actual human history, we look at human history, Christianity is always on the wrong side of history in terms of, you know, the equality of people who are not men, the LGBTQ issues, slavery, the treating women as property. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's not a moral system. And so to me, he does embody that. He hates the same people who they hate. He discriminates in the same way that their religion, you know, clearly discriminates. But people are so stuck on the pamphlet. The pamphlet says we love, we care. You know, it's all about justice.
Well,
so
and that's all they need to hear.
If I was to provide a little pushback,
sure,
you know, because that's what we're supposed to do, right? If you look at, so like the bottom line, if you look at what it means to be a Christian, right, is to be Christ-like. And if we just look at the virtues of Jesus, per se, like from the four Gospels, of his character, that this is supposedly a man who believes in justice. He believes in treating, you know, people equally. You know, he was a friend to the prostitute. He was, you know, a person that said to visit the sick, to visit those who are in prison, pay Caesar unto Caesar, but render unto God's what's God's. But you know, blessed are those who are meek and humble, for they inherit the earth. You know, blessed those who are poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. You know, so
well,
like
what you're describing is the classic Republican, you know, conservative American.
I get that. But what I'm saying is that if you just take on paper the teachings of Jesus from the four Gospels that we all grew up with, and we compare them to the characteristics that we are seeing from Christian nationalism itself, it does not add up.
Sure.
And that's why you do have groups of Christians who are actually vehemently against Christian nationalism. I mean, like you have like a whole sect of like with the Baptists against Christian nationalism. One of my favorite authors, Robert P. Jones, is atheist. He was raised, you know, Southern Baptist, who like wrote about, you know, the history of slavery in the church and also racism in the church. His latest book is The Hidden Roots of White Supremacy. He spoke at the Freedom from Religion Foundation's, you know, last conference, not this past one, but the one from the previous year, because, you know, there are actually, you know, Christians that are out there that are fighting to keep the separation of church and state because they understand that, you know, those those institutions are very porous, and that religion, especially Christianity, has been used in order to dictate how, a government is supposed to govern, and has actually been very integral on marginalizing people who happen to not be white, who happen to not men, and the like. So I think so, like, and I think this, Crystal in the chat brought it up too, that, remember, worldwide you have over 40,000 different Christian denominations. And the reason why you have over 40,000 is because if I get two Christians together from different churches who swear into heaven that their pastor teaches the proper gospel and the proper biblical teachings, because if any of you all who understand, especially growing up in non-denominational or what have you, everybody's pastor teaches biblical principles, but that pastor down the street around the corner is wrong. Okay, but my pastor's right. So you get two of them people together, and you start to name certain principles that that you think that they would agree with, and oftentimes they don't, because oftentimes we do have an issue specifically in Christianity where people will cherry pick their beliefs. I think that's pretty much appropriate, but I don't necessarily think it's fair to say that Christianity in of itself is this just because it was used to do that.
No, I'm not. Let me just say, I'm not trying to be fair to them. I'll be honest.
Sure.
I'm not really.
You know what?
I'm not really,
and to be honest, to be honest, Jay, I'm really okay with that. But I guess I'm not trying necessarily to do both sides. I'm just trying to, to think of a more pragmatic way to actually just look at this. But please continue.
Sure.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think that's the real. So that's one thing I wanted to ask y'all about, and kind of everybody here, because I think we're all YouTube creators here, and in our own channels and spaces. Has the situation, made you reevaluate your channel or your presence in this community, or how you go about things, or just where you at? Because for me, it just feels like a very fresh wound, and it feels like I don't even know what I don't know what I'm gonna do about this, but I don't know that I can continue to just do what I was doing before.
I really want to take more of a stand. I'm in a blue state. I really want to help strengthen and protect my neighbors, my physical neighbors.
Yeah.
Much appreciation to all the white guys for letting me cuss you out all week. It's been very cathartic.
Hello, let me call you white guy. I got something to say.
No, seriously.
Take this work. Just take this work.
White men, we got to talk. I'm just saying, I need you to be more vocal, because it ain't working. It ain't working.
Right.
But I mean, Jay and I went through a lot of BS about a year and a half ago, and where I really thought about taking myself out of the community. And I think it left me feeling stronger about the people who are around me. And I feel allyship. I've been trying to push for people in the community. I want to... I seriously, when I say I'm in a blue state, we're in the top 10 of the bluest states. I'm just so secure here. I want to secure and strengthen the protections that we already have. We have everything. We have we already have abortion. We already, and we pay for it. Our state budget pays for it. We're not to be part of Medicaid. Virtually nobody doesn't have health insurance. You either have it through your job or you can get it through the state. My county, the minimum wage is $17 an hour.
You sure you're in America? Damn.
Right. So right now I'm just do I I'm thinking do I want to get a state job? Do I where do my you know, where can my strengths be? Because I want to preserve this, you know, but like online, I don't know. I really haven't been interested in growing my channel, but I almost feel like I need to, because I need to reach more people. I need to push more people to speak up, speak out, and be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because we're all raised to get along and to maintain the status quo. And, you know, you don't want to be seen as a troublemaker. And it's really time to say, screw that nonsense. Like we've got to make some noise right now. We've got to, I mean, like people used to say resist. I mean, we've got to amp it up tenfold. So I don't know. I am rethinking, but it's more along those lines of just being more vocal and, you know, giving the support to people. You know, if nobody else has your back, I do. Like, speak up, speak out, and, you know, let's all be protected. Cynthia, you're pretty outspoken anyway.
Yeah, I can't shut up. That's my partner. He's in the chat right now. Yeah, I think that, like, well, even though like I don't necessarily have like a personal channel that I'm promoting at this particular point, because time, as you both know, is just not on my side. But like, you know, I am frequently on Skeptic Haven. I'm also on the nonprofits, and I'm a producer for that show right there. Shout out to Jestry. Thank you for, you know, for your $2 super
Yeah,
chat.
thanks for the super chat,
Yeah, thank you
Jester.
so much.
$2 from Jester. Somebody
Yes.
say trouble.
Yes, yes. We are troublemakers on this channel, I'll tell you right now.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that, like, in this particular day and age, knowing what we're facing, I think that, you know, being a person that's aligned with others that have a platform to actually share information that's not misinformation is so important. I think that, you know, one of the things that really dominated the media sphere is misinformation, when it came to the campaign, what's happening in the United States. Like, I think that, like, all the misinformation that was actually just being posited was like everyone in their mama had to turn around, like, spend most of their time debunking the misinformation that was happening. And I was listening to a pundit that I like to listen to on politics, because I'm such a political nerd, guys. Sorry, but I am. And the pundit said that there's a saying that the truth is stagnant when a lie can go around the world twice, and the truth is still trying to put its pants on.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and especially with nowadays, where we have like so many different platforms, like, you know, I think that some of us on this platform can remember when all we had was just ABC, CBS, NBC.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? As far as, like, you know, the credible news outlets. And then, of course, like, you know, as the 80s ramped up, we had cable, and then et cetera, and expanded. But now that we have all these different social media platforms, and anybody can create a channel, and anybody can say whatever the hell they want. And then, you know, there were different stories that were coming out with, like, some pundits who happen to tend to lean right wing were, you know, making, like, get this, guys, $100,000 per video.
Yeah.
$100,000 per video. Come to find out that, you know, a person who they just thought was just like some random billionaire who was just conservative was actually the Russian government, right? And it's kind of crazy how foreign entities have really, like, jumped in and started to basically spread propaganda, and it worked. It worked. And it makes me to the point to, you know, so I'm kind of like of two minds here. So one of my mind is it worth doing what we do? Right? Is it worth, like, I'm going to do a shameless plug, but it's on his channel, so it's okay. 30 and 60 is a show that, that we do on Saturdays, at the same time that we do Women Atheists Unload. And it's a show that I pitched, that I do, which basically covers the news nationally, globally, and also we talk about religious topics as well. And the purpose of that show is to basically enlighten all the ones who are, watching, about what's happening around us, because information is powerful and it's important, right? And we try to, come at it from a rational, skeptical point of view, and so that people are able to get the information, disseminate it, and then, like, do what they will with it in order for them to be able to make proper decisions for their lives. But that's not always the case with some of these other people that happen to be out here who have bigger YouTube platforms. And to be honest, like, if you are more right-wing, there's more money in right-wing media than there is left-wing media, unfortunately. But, since I am a social worker, I am a case manager, and as my partner Ware also mentioned, I do bleed pink, people. I am that pink okami. Yes, I am. And proud of it. I would never get rich off of this, is basically what I'm saying. Right. But, I think that I guess, like, I'm of the mind that I think it's more important to make sure that people are armed with correct information than running around with misinformation, because misinformation is more dangerous. And we see how misinformation has basically led us into the position that we are in today, where we elected a misogynist, xenophobe, fascist who has been liable for sexual assault. And all I can say is, wow, America, we really did that. Kudos. So I think that, like, for those who happen to be of a more rational mind, who actually paid attention to what the new president-elect and also his pundits have been saying, it's important for us to basically, as my former pastor used to say, stand against the wall, to, lift the gates high, to, stand and fight, and also, be unapologetic in the things that we say, in order for other people to actually pay attention. And one more thing I wanted to give a shout out to is the Secular Coalition of America, that happens to organize a day of lobbying or a day of action in Washington, D.C. every year. They actually set up appointments with sitting congresspeople and go in with talking points, and they actually confront these people and tell them what are the concerns who happen to be secular humanists. And I plan on being there in March, and I would encourage any person who is able to go to the nation's capital and participate. Just look up Secular Coalition of America. It's they have a website, and it gives, like, the information as far as, like, being able to participate, in their day of action. Just to say that, I as a citizen and as part of the electorate did not let democracy die in the dark. And that's just how I take it at that.
Yeah, so I'm in a weird place, and then I guess we'll let Stan close us out. I don't know what to do, y'all. I'm angry, I'm hurt, like I just don't know. So one of the things that I do definitely feel like I have to stay engaged with my community. I mean, that's my life. I'm not one of those people that has I don't see my online community as separate from my IRL life. I see my online communities as my real life. It's just remote. So if I disengage from my online community, I just wouldn't have any community. So I can't really, that's not really an option right now. But I do feel like, so one thing I've been talking about a lot is I call it the great white cope. And to me, what it is just the unwillingness of people to look the ugliness in the face. And I think for a lot of us that, you know, I'm talking to Black women on here, right? Y'all know what it's like to be overqualified and not get something, and have somebody who's underqualified get it, you know, in spite of all their flaws. This is an extreme hyperbolic example of that, but that is what it is an example of. And I feel like all of these people coming out and saying, oh, it was the kitchen table issues. They were just so concerned about the price of eggs. They were really concerned about the border. You know, they voted based on their, like, all of those are the excuses. And I feel like the people who need to be fighting with us are in this moment. They sometimes people say they're playing with their food, but I say what I see, it looks like the food is playing with you. Because it feels like the people that we engage with are making us play fetch. You really have some ugliness in your heart that we need to confront, but instead you say, oh, I'm worried about the price of eggs. And then you go run and do your research. Well, I did the research and it turns out her economic plan was better. And actually 15 economists actually said his plan will take us. Oh, well, I'm really concerned about the border. Well, did you know immigrants actually help us and they actually, you know, help lower the cost of our domestic needs, right? And because
on
they
top
don't
of
want to
that,
deal with the ugliness. And at some point, I'm sitting on this.
I'm sorry, I just had to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
When you actually look at the policies when it comes to immigration between both administrations, there's not that much difference.
Not that much difference.
Yeah, I'm about to say, like, you know, I know that the first couple of years that Biden took over office is because a lot of Trump's policies expired as far as like the border is concerned. But when he got a chance to actually just to double and triple down to being, like, you know, very like stringent on the border, he was. And matter of fact, Obama was nicknamed the deporter in chief. And there was recently a study that came out, I want to say by the Cato Institute, where it showed that by the Harris-Biden administration deported by raw number and percentage more immigrants than Trump did. So so I thought all that other crap was bullshit. But please continue.
Yeah. So we've always known it's never been about the policies or the issues, but we're still dealing with the historical cycle of this. Even like the Roe v. Wade stuff. People, do your history, please, because Roe v. Wade wasn't an issue until they needed it racially.
Right.
It was when they couldn't say the N-word and they really, right, it was part of moralizing and the New Southern strategy and all that, right? That was when it became an issue because they knew they could motivate the same people to do the same things, but they needed a new issue. So we have always dealt with this history of, they will tell you, and I call the exit polls excuse polls, because that's what I feel like they are. They're literally come out, please give us an excuse for why you just went in there and voted for a fascist. Oh, okay, well, I was worried about this, and I was worried about that, and I was worried about this. And then we spend 4 years worrying about all the excuses they just listed off to us, instead of really confronting these people with what you really just did and why you really just did it. And so I feel like I have to do more to communicate that to people and really try to cut through the noise. But something PC brought up that I'm gonna bring up here because it's a Black Freethinkers is PC told me the white folks ain't gonna do it. And that hit me like
not their core base.
Huh?
Not their core base.
Yeah, like it hit me like a ton of bricks. Really just saying they don't get it. Right? They don't get it. They don't see. They don't feel what we feel. Like in this moment.
Like what aspect of it?
Like in other words, our white allies won't say the things we need them to say because they're not in the same situation that we're in. This isn't the same desperate times call for desperate measures for us that it is for them. And they've always played that game. And honestly, I feel this with apologetics because a big part of my disappointment in the situation is looking at the behavior of the Christians, because we know the overwhelming majority of evangelicals in this country went for Trump. And it's just another example of how is this the morality that's supposed to be calling us to follow y'all into the church?
They're white nationalists. Like, they're not trying to. That's not what.
That's what I'm saying to other Christians. It's like they're not realizing this is what we see. We see Christians doing this to us. Where's the moral example? And so, for me, it's very hard to deal with apologetics now because I feel like that's what it is. Like I was listening to something earlier. It was like a Jordan Peterson thing or whatever.
Why were you doing that? Why
it popped up on my feed. But
never happens to me.
But I realized that all of this is probably a waste. Like it's all a waste. Like it's all this really cruel, because like the reason I mentioned this because somebody in the chat was doing this stuff. This person in the chat, Zello Rise or whatever, because they were even brought up the argument from contingency or something. Like again, I just got to say, I think it's really weird and really, really cruel to have listened to a panel of people talking about how this made up being commands genocide, destroy the whole planet, thinks we all deserve to burn in hell, and then y'all get on your high horse and go, well, I think there's a really good argument from to justify his Are you serious? Like that we don't ever hit him with the are you serious? And we let people, the argument from contingency, the arguments from morality, the historicity of the New Testament. Why are we letting people talk to us about these things right now? We have all of this craziness going on, and these people want to spend hours upon hours, and that to me is taking our allies. Because let me be clear, there's a reason there's a lot of diversity in this space. A lot of people who come from religious backgrounds, they tend to be more conservative, so they tend to be rather regressive and oppressive. So when you have a secular community where people get away from those things, all the marginalized people is going to be showing up. But we show up and we think we have these allies and we're like, yes, I got some friends, I got a community, I got some people that know what's up. But then here come the apologists, and here come that game of fetch. Argument from contingency, throw this, I got some philosophy. So I'm really trying to figure out like how to break that cycle. And I don't know how.
I don't know if we can, to be honest with you, Jay.
You right.
Well,
we can't either.
Because like, think about it. Like, you know, we had this whole conversation. Shout out to you, Stan, for sharing your story with us. And from what I can gather, like a lot of us who had like, you know, some type of Christian spiritual background and have found themselves in this space now, is that we kind of reasoned ourselves out of it, right? We kind of like had like some type of moment where we started to examine our beliefs, our upbringing, our, you know, some of the things that have been told to us, and we basically put that into a litmus test. I mean, like, you're a scientist, you understand this.
Yeah.
And then when we actually went through the litmus test, we went through our, you know, we came up with our hypothesis, is this real? And then we put it through the methodology, the scientific method, and then we came to find out the conclusion was nah. So we have a nah theory, right? And then, you know, and we find ourselves on this particular spot. And then like, and I really think that America and the world will not really come to a stance of humanism as a whole until we reason ourselves out of non-humanism. And unfortunately, that is just not that is just not the sentiment of the majority. We totally do right. And I think that we do have more and more people that are coming out of that mindset. I know that like the non-religious or the irreligious are larger than they have ever been before. They happen, and then you have more and more people that have started to separate themselves from some type of religious entity. But, you know, propaganda is real. cultism is real, and we have seen these sentiments over and over again in different inceptions in history, and it just has to get to a point where, you know, the majority of the, you know, humankind starts to put away certain things that don't necessarily align with well-being, and part of that is to put aside beliefs that cannot be quantified or, you know, or verified in an empirical manner, and also look at those belief systems and see how they have affected how the course of history has driven us to us has driven us as human beings, and if we were able to really be able to survive from that or not. I mean, like, I think of like specifically what's going on in Gaza, and if you listen to, you know, the IDF, and you listen to, you know, Israeli government officials, especially Benjamin Netanyahu, before they even started to, like, you know, bombard these people with their military incursions, you know, he actually compared Palestinians to the Amalekites. And I mean, and for of us who are familiar with the Amalekites, what did God say to do?
Wipe them out.
Wipe them out.
Destroy them.
Yeah. Wipe them out. You know, every man, every woman, every child, all of them. Get rid of them. You know, because they are haters of God, and we have no use for them. And so, you know, so this is something that we are dealing with right now, and unfortunately, people who have this, like, you know, theocratic, autocratic, you know, the mindset is now in power, and we have it here now. So I don't, so, like, you know, I'm with you. Like, I don't necessarily know what the answer is. I really don't. But I know that good people should not stand by and do nothing. And unfortunately, you know, and as much as I would hear someone like, you know, my other friends saying that I'm leaving the United States and I'm packing up, I'm gone. And you know what? I don't fault them for that, but I don't have the means to do that. Like, I can just pick up my life and be like, peace, I'm out. You know what I'm saying? You know,
it's going to take a lot before I consider that for real.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, I thought about it, but I mean, like, you know, I mean, like, there's this, like, right now, that just is not tenable.
That creates a lot of other problems.
Yeah. Totally. But I get it, and I don't necessarily excoriate people who want to do it. But at the same time, you know, I had one of my cross the pond friends who, you know, was listening to a lot of us that was really lamenting about the election, say, okay, so if all y'all leave, who's gonna stay and fight?
No, when I think about leaving, I'm saying let them have it. You know, I understand that because you know,
that depends on the level of safety that my family and I are able to maintain on this land. You know, right now there's worse places around that I don't already have a mortgage on. You know, on that I, you know, I'm pretty settled in right here, right now. But you know,
I mean, me in particular, I'm about the people, not the land. I'm already talking about, you know what? Let me know when we need to get the Underground Railroads together, because I mean, there's just some people that we already know aren't safe, and they deserve to live. And at the end of the day, that's where my you know, loyalties lie, is the most good, the most well-being for the people. And if it's not here, then we'll make it somewhere else. But this is getting ridiculous that there are people who, you know, would rather burn the country to the ground than see a Black man have something, or woman, as the case may be.
I mean,
I'm not fighting for that.
And I mean, but we can just, like, you know, as much as we talk about kitchen table items, we cannot discount misogyny and racism in this country.
Oh yeah, no, I have not done that.
No, and that's what I want. That's exactly what I want people to recognize, and I want them to stop using the kitchen table. And look,
Yeah, that's what Jay was
I'm not saying the kitchen
earlier.
table issues aren't real issues. I'm not saying people aren't concerned about prices. I'm not saying that people aren't concerned about legitimate foreign and domestic policy. What I'm saying is those concerns don't explain what just happened.
Right.
and furthermore, the people who are serious about being our allies and are serious about helping and making the world a better place, you have to recognize the other side is always going to give you an excuse. You cannot be silly enough to think that they're just gonna, maybe a few of the crazy ones gonna really come out and tell you, but your analysis has to go deeper, just as it has for us. We've always been told these stories. We've always been told, oh, it's not that, it's just not the right time, and this just isn't the right opportunity. Or you know what, we girl, it's so many headaches in this job. We gave it to him so he could deal with the headaches. You don't even really want this. So that's what we're saying is just understand we've been around the block a time or two, and we know how this game goes.
I think it's such a systemic and inbuilt issue here that it's just going to have to run its course. I don't see this as an issue that people are going to be convinced over. The people that support Trump and not due to misinformation. There's the low information people that they just believe the first thing that they hear, and then they tune into sources that only give them positive information, so they never even heard of the negative, crazy stuff that happens on a daily basis. There's those people, but then there's quite a few people that, and I would even say the majority of his supporters, that hear what he has to say and they like it. They want that because this is stuff that they've been dying to say for their whole lives, but they couldn't comfortably say it out loud before. They were just saying it at home, and they were saying it at their friend's house, and they were saying it in their little spaces that they gather. Now it's okay because it's freaking WWF out here. People jumping off the ropes and slinging this and that, hitting each other with folding chairs and stuff in the political world right now, mostly because of Donald Trump himself and his. There were
mass texts that went out this week telling Black people to get ready to report for slavery. I mean, it was
that's
really crazy. But
I'm hoping that's like from Black Twitter or something because that sounds
I think it was some kind of bot or something.
There's people who like that stuff, and they ain't going nowhere. They're teaching their kids to love the same stuff, and eventually, no empire lasts forever, whether that's the empire of the current political system or the United States itself. Nothing lasts forever. So whether if you can tolerate it, if you can survive where you're at, this is the way I look at it. Just like last time he was president, I was scared, I was worried. I saw a bunch of buffoonery happen, and then he went away. I hoped he was gone for good. Now he's coming back. Most likely, I'm just telling myself this. Maybe it's because I don't want to go insane.
Wishful thinking?
Yeah, 4 years are going to go by. And he's either going to be too incompetent to get.
Well, he's not. He doesn't really want to do anything. It's the people that he's surrounding himself with, and like everybody that he's surrounding himself with, like helps write Project 2025. So they're jumping in on that opportunity to get their agendas done. Right. And that's what I'm more concerned
those things
about.
Are inevitable, though.
Because 40 years ago, everybody wants to blame Reagan for what we're in right now. But Reagan, actually, his playbook was also from the Heritage Foundation, Mandate for Leadership. Everything we hate about right now that we attribute to Reagan can get worse because 40 years ago, they were implementing it then. And everything just it was just snowball after snowball after snowball. And it can get worse. It really can. And I don't want to do the wishful thinking thing. And I've been trying to tell my family that because it's like, everybody's like, well, we've always, and I'm like, yeah, you always until it falls. Like, and it's not like, I mean, freaking Rome fell, the Soviet Union fell, or Russia fell, Germany, like that wasn't a pleasant era to get through, after Hitler. We have the world currency. This is going to be bad worldwide if we fall. I really want people to brace for this. Like, there's no easy way out of this.
Well, you got to be prepared, and you have to be adaptable.
Yeah.
Those are things that I learned throughout my life in the military, all the crazy stuff that I've been through.
Oh, Stan,
you just got to be ready to do whatever it is that you got to do.
Stan, which branch did you serve? Which branch did you serve?
I was in the Air Force.
You were in the Air Force?
Yeah.
Okay, I won't say what they normally call it.
What, the chair force?
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
I sat in several chairs during my time.
The chair force. That's a real inside military
only
cruelty.
Service members are allowed to say that, though.
Yeah, that's
why I didn't. That's why.
Yeah, that's some inside military cruelty right there.
The military, they have some really crazy names for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's got their reputations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What they're known for.
I will say to you specifically, Stan, happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day, my friend.
I personally have come from generations of Black men who served in the military. My father was in the Navy. My grandfather was in the Army, and my great-grandfather was in the Army as well. My grandfather served in World War II, and my great-grandfather served in World War I, and my father served in Korea. So shout out to all the military people out there. Especially Black men in the military, and Black men who were in the military, get your GI Bill, because for a long time they were actually denied, even though they earned it. I have a whole story about that. We can tell on the next Black Freethinkers. But one of the things that I really wanted to say to people specifically is that I understand that sometimes you can overinflate your brain with all the information that's coming out, especially with the promises that 45 to 47 has made. And the reality is that we're not completely sure what is going to be done. But I think it's important to stay aware and also try to prepare yourself as best as possible. Unfortunately, we can't prepare ourselves for everything, right? But at the same time, it's a good thing to just be aware and also just to seek information on how you can protect yourself and others who you happen to be allied with.
Yeah.
And also to I just really want to say to the LGBTQIA plus community, and also especially my trans friends, my heart really goes out to you. And, hopefully we can do our best to try to hold space for the people, especially in the trans community, because I know that they're really undergunned right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel for my trans friends. They're mostly going through hardships and having hard times, but we love them and just be safe, and I think that's part of what breaks my heart, is that there are really people who are not okay and really fleeing the country and stuff, and I can't blame them. I mean, this is some apartheid stuff. They were saying at their conferences, we're gonna end this on day one. So they're feeling the same, if not similar pressure to people who are under threat of mass deportation are feeling. I mean, this is some serious stuff. But Stan, I wanted to give you a chance to tell us just sort of your thoughts on, if your approach to anything on your channel has changed, or you've been thinking about it since this all happened, and just what you got going on over there coming up for people to check out.
Well, I've been taking kind of a breather, honestly. So before I intentionally, before the election time period, I basically filmed a bunch of content and had it all produced and scheduled and everything. Took a couple weeks to do that, so I'm good for the next 3 weeks.
Nice,
I could just kind of chill and decompress, figure out what I'm going to do. I'm I might get a little into some political stuff if it's relevant. I kind of want to stay in the realm of the Christian religious analysis and deconstruction and stuff like that. So, but there's so many crossovers between the political world right now and that. So, if I have the energy for it and the mental bandwidth, I may get into that stuff. But
And is there anything that you've recorded that you want to preview for people or tell people about?
Let me see. I mean, I got so many things. For some reason, I don't know if it's the algorithm or what, but I was doing pretty good for a few weeks there when I started really rolling, but now I'm like not getting pushed very much at all. But I've been doing a lot of kind of reaction videos where I would pull up a video and, like a 1 to 5 minute video from a Christian channel and kind of watch it and go through and break down the inconsistencies and the logical problems that I find with it. And the next one that's coming out Friday is a story that I never really, I mean, when you're growing up and you're in the faith, you listen to this stuff. Hey, there's a little baby. What's up? Yeah. You go into these stories and you listen to it and you hear something crazy and you're like, wow, that's pretty crazy. And then you just keep going because maybe that's not the main thing of the story. But I saw this dude who did a video about a chapter in Genesis where God, and I remember hearing this and reading this back when I was a kid, but I just never really thought about it until now again. And where God is sends Moses to go tell Pharaoh to let his people go. And he, on the way there, Moses is on his way there. And it says that God came across Moses and was about to kill him. And then his wife cuts off their son's foreskin, which is, this is very graphic with the baby being in the picture right now. But, cuts off the foreskin and rubs it on the blood on his feet. And then God's like, all right, I'm not going to kill him anymore. He just leaves him alone. I heard that story before. I read that story and I was like, wow, that's intellectually, that's a totally sane story.
Yeah,
that
makes sense.
At some point, I was like, fair enough. The universal cosmic creator of all things comes across a dude and decides to kill him, knowing that dude is instrumental. This is the first book of the Bible. This dude is instrumental in everything that happens. He's like, man, I'm about to kill this dude. And then the thing that stops him is rubbing the blood of the foreskin of the man's infant son.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when
not weird at all.
How do you look at
not
that?
Weird.
It's fascinating to me that there was a time in my life where I looked at that. I guess when you show that to a kid and you tell them that it's normal, that messes up the whole everything normal for the rest of that kid's life, in my opinion.
You would think.
Yeah.
I looked at that and the dude he spoke about this story for like somewhere between 1 and 5 minutes. And I got like a 26-minute reaction video out of that, of just breaking down every point that I could think of how absurd that story is. The logical inconsistencies of why he would even do that. What does it mean to be about to do something when you know all and you know that you're not going to do it? What does it mean to be about to do something if you know you weren't even going to do it? Yeah. He knows Moses is going to go on to be the founder of his religion, the tribal faith of this, and this worldwide empire. But he was about to kill him. It's a whole diatribe I go on. It was a lot of fun, and it was I think it's worth a watch if y'all check out my channel.
Well, I'm looking forward to
Friday
it, man.
afternoon.
I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be great. And everybody go subscribe to Stan Gray TRQ, the right questions. Our new junior producer is telling me it's time to rap. She said, y'all get my mama up here
I gotta go home.
way too long.
Yes,
All
fresh
right.
made child ready to go to bed.
Yeah, let me see if I could find. I gotta find the the banners and the things. All right, so let's see. I'll probably mess this up. But all right, look, y'all, don't forget to check out our other shows on Skeptic Haven. Every other Monday is Black Freethinkers. Thursdays is the Sunny Spot. Saturday is the Global Atheists and Women Atheists Unload. And I think also the new show that Cam was telling us about. And also, Let's Talk is the call-in show on Sunday. And of course, we want to send a special thank you to our patrons, Paul Cammish, Helen Greene, Logan Fisher, Amanda McLeod, Eric Azols, Rion, Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Sunny Shell, Aaron Colson, and Phil Calderone. Of course, I want to thank my lovely, lovely co-host, Cynthia McDonald, and Maya Adkisson, and our wonderful, wonderful guest, Stan Gray. Stan, thank you so much for joining us. We will definitely have to have you back on Black Freethinkers. This was really wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me.
Thanks to everybody watching. Thanks to all the moderators. Thanks to all the chatters. If you're watching later, please do leave us a comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. All right, gang. We'll see you next time.